I worked at LISC from 1981 to 2020. That's a lot of years. Hi, I'm Richard Manson, the former National LISC Program Vice President from New York, who helped establish the LISC Kansas City program. I'm delighted today to share a few stories from some key partners who have helped make this program a success over its past 40 years.
Can you share any thoughts you have about the important role that community development corporations or organizations have played in Kansas City's history?
Well, in the aftermath of the riots, an already decimated and ugly community looked worse and was in fact worse. Model Cities program was eventually morphed into community development. It was the first time that we had a concentrated effort in Kansas City and all around the country for that matter, but for sure here in Kansas City, to do community development.
And in Kansas City, we had neighborhood groups like 4963 and Santa Fe and the West Side, but to get the money, you had to have citizens officially participating. So nobody quite knew what to do with that, and that was sort of the beginning of community development corporations. They said, well, there's so much work to be done in grassroots neighborhoods to create a clean, safe, and quiet neighborhood. Some of it needs paid professionals, and they became the Community Development Corporation. So 74 was the beginning of it. 87 was the creation of the low-income housing tax credit. And that was a huge, and it was made permanent in 91. Then the CDC industry morphed into housing production of affordable low-income rental housing.
Some of your recollections of kind of how Kansas City came to be considered for an office.
Sure. So in the early days of LISC, building on a national organization, it was very popular. And it turned out there was more demand for its resources than there was cash for its resources. So LISC had to have a strategy of how to deal with that healthy tension. And one of those strategies was working with a set of consultants. It went around the country to see if there were local communities interested in this idea of working with urban revitalization, community development through neighborhood-based organizations. And Kansas City had a long and rich history in philanthropies. 1981, 82, in partnership with what was then the Kansas City Neighborhood Alliance, created this joint effort between LISC National and the Kansas City Marketplace through KCNA. So in the beginning, I would come out with the staff. Tony Salazar was the point person, and in the beginning, he and I would do much of the meetings. We would meet with elected officials to figure out what their priorities were, neighborhood leadership, what their priorities were, philanthropic leaders. Everyone had the same priorities, but for some reason, they didn't have a table to all sit at to talk to each other. So suddenly, there was money on the table to support neighborhood-driven priorities, not outside-driven priorities. And while the scale was small, it allowed for successful projects to happen. And everyone likes being with a winner. So as projects were successful, people started saying, well, gee, can you do this at a larger scale? Are there other organizations who could do this? Are there other donors who would find this attractive?
It's so good to see
No,
you.
I was delighted
It just brings back, we had fun, didn't we?
I think they're a little jealous because they've seen over the last day how much fun I've had. What was it about LISC that made you want to put your time and effort into this new crazy idea?
I think it was your hair. I think, no, seriously.
glad it hasn't changed.
Seriously. No, I think the story of LISC is really one of the most compelling stories of nonprofits in the country today. And I say that because you really had the message right. You were talking about a way for people and communities to take their imagination that they had for neighborhoods, community areas, and then you were going to help them have the expertise, the capital, and in some ways, that extra boost to make that imagination a reality. I think all of us that heard that story said, why would we not want to build a local chapter to help our growing nonprofits have access to that? So it was just a great vision, mission, and you had backed it up.
Were there things that you hope to accomplish kind of during your tenure as executive director?
You can't just invest in affordable housing. I really wanted to see grants being made and capacity being built for all aspects of quality of life, improving people's opportunities. And I think that was the biggest switch. It was just like, we have to listen to the people who live there, who are invested there. What do they think? So the investments could be economic development, they could be childcare, they could be affordable housing, they could be all kinds of different investments. And I think that was the smart way to go.
We really started working on trying to build out these policy networks. There really wasn't a voice for affordable housing in terms of policy work in Kansas. No one was really all coming together to talk about what work could be done in Kansas and in Missouri at the state level. So that was a really kind of nice grassroots way that we started building out.
When I'm able to drive through the community like 18th and Vine and see all of the buildings that have erected,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is what we did. As I go back and the work that's being done along the Truce Corridor really excites me because I know that LISC was the founding of that. 39th and Prospect, just getting the Aldi's there. I mean, that's what, I'm getting chills because I really get excited about it.
They provided the funding for me to get hired before I came over to Community Builders. So I got into this field really as a result of LISC making funds available through their Section 4. And now, some 30 years later, from a development specialist to now president and CEO of Community Builders of Kansas City. That's a testament to LISC and its vision of providing and growing future leaders.
In the Missouri side, one of our biggest initiatives was getting the land bank passed. That was just an amazing experience, but we were able to get that done, and there were 5,000 properties that actually transferred immediately over to the land bank.
I believe your website says that your focus is to connect communities with resources, and I'd like to say that that has truly been our experience. The first new houses were built, LISC was the conduit for us getting the financing to get those built. Since then, we've built 7 additional
really
houses.
Start strong and hopefully build it from
LISC has a name in Kansas City. It goes back to the good work that was done earlier in terms of housing. And so I think when somebody like me, with my background as it relates to housing, is in a position to get money to worthwhile organizations, I'm going to do it every time.
What would you suggest for the current leadership of the Kansas City program? Any thoughts?
To rediscover the role of the citizens on the block.
I very much believe in a partnership approach and that the neighborhood needs to be represented at the table and that we need to partner and build on the strengths of the neighborhood.
I'd like to see, LISC that has helped grow a housing trust fund to $350 million here in Kansas City. And I would like to see Jeff, who is now sitting in his rocking chair, saying, that's what I helped do. So, those are some of the things I'd like to see in the future.
As long as you're sitting there with me.
Absolutely.
On the porch.
Absolutely.
The original vision and mission that they had has never been needed more than we need it right now. To have the kind of bold movement in this area, whether it's affordable housing, revitalization of neighborhoods, it's essential that we have a strong LISC chapter here.
It was unprecedented leadership of those players. People make a difference. There are always going to be institutions that can do it, but do they have the will to do it? And the story of Kansas City that I would like to leave is that Kansas City had the will because it had the leaders who stepped forward.